Indiana Choice Scholarship Program. So what do you know about the Indiana Choice Scholarship Program? So go to minty.com and use the code, or you can use your phone and scan the QR code and it will take you to the website. So when you get to the website, it's going to look like this. You can either enter one word about what you know about the Indiana Choice Scholarship Program, a phrase, you can fill in all three boxes, just one box, it's up to you. So what do you know about the Indiana Choice Scholarship Program? So what it's going to do is when everyone answers, it will turn into a word cloud. And the word cloud creates the word that people said most, the biggest. So in this instance, the most people said nothing, because it's in the middle and it's the biggest. So most people don't know anything about the Indiana Choice Scholarship Program. Some other things people said, a few knew that it was private schools, vouchers. Someone said dangerous, killing education. So they're just some of the ideas that people had about Indiana Choice Scholarship Program. So since a lot of people didn't know what the Indiana Choice Scholarship Program is, let's dive into it a little bit. So in 2011, Mitch Daniels was the governor of Indiana, and he created the Indiana Choice Scholarship Program. And this program gave vouchers to students to cover tuition costs to attend private schools. It was paid for by public tax dollars, and these vouchers were for low-income students who attended failing public schools. And there was a cap at only 7,500 students were able to receive these vouchers a year. The thought behind this was that public schools would have access and the opportunity to see all students first. And if they weren't meeting expectations for parents, parents would have the choice and the opportunity to pull those students and put them to private schools without having to worry about cost being an issue. Mitch Daniels was actually quoted saying, "The voucher program won't be a very large phenomenon in Indiana." And in the years since 2011, we've seen that this isn't the case, and that Indiana now has the largest voucher program in the country. So how has it changed? In 2013, Mike Pence was now the governor of Indiana. And within months of him becoming governor, he changed the program and added pathways. So now students did not have to attend a public failing school to apply for these vouchers, and he upped the income requirement, so it now reached middle class families. Within a year of these new pathways, the participation of the Indiana Choice Scholarship Program doubled, and white vouchers went from 46% to 60%, and Black students dropped from 24% to 12% receiving these vouchers. So if you look at the graph here, the gray are the students who attended a public school, and the green are the students who didn't have any record of attending public school. So from 2011 to 2013, the majority of kids receiving these vouchers were kids who attended public schools and were getting out of those public schools. After Mike Pence made these changes, the number of kids who never attended a public school slowly was on the increase, and we see it continuously increasing. So these students who are receiving money to pay for their vouchers already were attending private schools, already were paying to attend. Now the government and these tax dollars are paying it for them. And then what does it look like today? So fewer than 1% of students who receive these vouchers are leaving failing schools. For the 2023-2024 school year, 53,262 students are in the program, and the state is spending $311.8 million of tax dollars into these vouchers. So that's 9,000 more students in the program this year than the previous year, and 70.4 million more dollars going into this program than last year. As of July 1st, they changed the income qualification for the Indiana Choice Scholarship Program, and now a family of four making $220,000 are eligible for this for these vouchers. So that's 400% more than the free and reduced lunch cost, and it's 4 times more than the average Indiana median household income, which is $62,000. The plan with the Indiana Choice Scholarship Program over the next 2 years is to make changes to this to where nearly all students in the state of Indiana will qualify for these vouchers and be eligible to apply for these vouchers. And it's predicted within those 2 years that 41,800 more students will enroll, and it's going to cost the state of Indiana $1.136 billion. So $1.136 billion going to private schools instead of public schools. So you might be asking, how does this affect students with disabilities? Well, first off, public school or private schools can make students take admission tests. So if they don't pass a test, they won't be accepted into the school. Private schools can also reject students who have a record of behavior issues. So a lot of times that would be your students with autism, your students with emotional disabilities. If the private school sees that there's behaviors, they can say, nope, they can't come to school here. And students who are their parents place them in private schools do not have a right to individual services. So the IDEA requires a district to provide free and appropriate public education, or FAPE, but those are only to students attending public schools, and private schools don't have to provide FAPE to students. Private schools also don't follow the Individualized Education Plan, or an IEP, that all public schools follow. They follow an ISP, which is a Individualized Service Plan. So if a student transfers from a public school to a private school, all of their files in IIEP are lost. And I actually had this happen to me a few weeks ago. I had a student move 2 years ago with a grandparent an hour away. The grandparents enrolled them in a private school. And then this year, the teacher at that private school emailed me asking for the psych eval of this student. I didn't have access to it anymore because she's not in the IIEP system. So I had to email our co-op, and our co-op had to go into the archives and find the file and send it to the school. Whereas if the school was still required to follow the IEP and be in the IEP system, all these files would still be following the student even into a private school. Also, private schools are exempt from the Americans with Disabilities Act. So the Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA, is a federal law that protects students with disabilities from school discrimination. But private religious schools are exempt from following ADA, and most voucher schools in Indiana are religious schools, so they don't have to follow the Americans with Disabilities Act. Private schools also they cannot deny based on race, color, national origin, disability, but those protections are limited and open to interpretation, like the ADA, for example. Public schools are also required to complete child find process for students in private schools. So under the IDEA, the district where the private school is located is responsible for evaluating, locating, and identifying students with special needs. So if a student is attending a private school, it's suspected that they have special needs, they send someone from the public school into that school to provide services and to evaluate the student. So even though the school's already getting public tax dollars, those private schools, the public schools are sending people into their schools and taking away from their time with the public schools kids into private schools. All right, so this is a personal story of a student with special needs who was denied acceptance into a private school. So this is a mom talking. She has 3 kids. 2 of them attend a private school ran by their church, and they really love their church. When they tried to enroll their son who has autism, they were denied. So let's take a listen to her story.
Interestingly, Indiana stands out because its state voucher law really gives these schools a lot of leeway. So, Corey, you and your team focused on one group of students that's having a hard time using these vouchers, and that's students who need special education services. That's right. My colleagues and I should say I worked hand in hand with 2 member station reporters from Indiana, Peter Ballin and Rosen and Eric Weddle, and we had all heard anecdotally that kids with disabilities, kids who require special education services, were really being shut out. We're being turned away by some private schools, and we wanted to understand, number one, if that's really true, and number 2, if so, why? We met up with a mother just outside of Indianapolis. Her name is Ashley. Producer Acacia Squires and I visited her at home one afternoon. Let's take a listen.
Hi.
Hi.
Come on in.
Ashley?
Yes, nice to meet you.
So Ashley walked us past stacks of boxes. She and her husband were getting ready to move to a bigger house. Really about the only thing that wasn't packed was this large crescent-shaped couch where her 8-year-old son Isaac was playing.
Hi. What are you doing here, everyone?
Isaac is on the autism spectrum and was working with an in-home therapist. You'll hear Isaac in the background as Ashley shares her story.
We love our school, so without the voucher, we wouldn't have been able to do that. And we're really grateful that we had that choice.
When she says our school, Ashley's talking about her two daughters who use vouchers to attend a private school run by their church. When she tried to enroll Isaac there, Ashley says the school's principal was sympathetic,
but she didn't feel that she could offer Isaac what he needed. And so that was kind of where that stopped.
Ashley doesn't seem angry, more sad. She says the school is small and the voucher might not have covered Isaac's needs. We're not using her last name to give Isaac some privacy, and because Ashley feels deeply torn about what happened. After all, the church and school are still very important to her family. Still, she says, knowing Isaac couldn't join his sisters was really hard for her emotionally.
I think that every special needs parent goes through periods of grieving. Sometimes when your expectations don't meet the reality, or you don't have the opportunities that you had hoped to have for your child. And it hurt.
It turns out Ashley's story is not unusual.
Okay, so that story was really alarming to me because I can't imagine being a parent and having two kids attending this school that I love and it's part of my community and my church, and then my son that has autism being denied and he has to go to a different school than what my kids are going to. And as I said, this they're not the only story of this. The story happened over and over and over again in the state of Indiana. Also, it may not be the case for this family, but some of those families that this is happening to are their kids are being put into public schools that are failing, that are short on resources, short on staff, and these kids with disabilities are being stuck in those schools instead of having the choice of where to go.
Interestingly, Indiana stands out because its state voucher law really gives these schools a lot of leeway.
All right, so this is a little breakdown of 3 schools in Indiana and then the state of Indiana's average. So Roncalli High School and Heritage Christian Schools are the 2 schools in Indiana that receive the most money through the Indiana Choice Scholarship Program. So Roncalli receives $4.2 million each year, and Heritage Christian received $3.7 million. I teach at Southwest DuBois School Corporation, and then the bottom is the state of Indiana. So when you look at that, the state has 2 times more the SPED kids than are going to Roncalli High School. And if you look at Heritage Christian, the state has 4 times more special needs students than are attending Heritage Christian. And you see that trend across the board between economically disadvantaged kids, the EL kids. They're all a lot lower than the state average. So public schools are advocates where that scholarship money is going to these religious schools, and it's not really being monitored of where this money is going. So as you can see, my school has 16.2% of my school has special needs. So all this money, over $7 million, are going to these public schools that aren't accepting all these students with disabilities, and instead of going to public schools. So the school I teach in is a rural school with very little resources. Currently, we have 1 behavior consultant, and that behavior consultant goes to the 4 schools in my district, plus 2 schools in 2 other districts. We're also very short-staffed on paraprofessionals because our district doesn't have the money to pay them a decent wage, so we can't get people to come work for us for the amount that we offer. We don't have a social worker. Some of the behavior issues or the mental health issues that we're seeing arise in the state of Indiana, we don't have resources for these students. And many private schools will argue that they don't accept students with disabilities because they can't provide resources for them, and public schools receive more money. And while we might receive more money, you can see why we do, because our percentage of kids with disabilities are way, way higher. But it's still not enough money to provide them with the supports and resources that they really need. So this is a quote from 2017 from Jennifer McCormick. She was our Republican state superintendent at the time. When she was asked about the Indiana Choice Scholarship Program, she said, "Any school that receives public dollars should be held to the same standard. We're spending on a program and not really reviewing it. That is irresponsible." So she was saying that she doesn't agree. So she works at the Department of Education. She doesn't agree with the Indiana Choice Scholarship Program, but the Department of Education can't do anything about it, that this was a legislative decision. So in other words, lawmakers who created the program are the only ones who can change the program. So what changes need to be made? So private schools need to follow the standard IIEP format that all public schools in Indiana follow. They should accept students of all ability levels. Many times these private schools are only accepting your students with the least restrictive environment of 50, and those are your kids who spend the majority of their time in the resource room. They don't accept a lot of those 51s, 52s, and so on, that have a lot more usually behavior needs or need a lot of academic support. So they're accepting those students who need very little academic support and have very little behavior issues. Private schools should also provide same resources and accommodations as public schools, and the public schools shouldn't have to be required to go into private schools and provide resources. If they're going to get public tax dollars, they should have to provide those resources themselves. If public schools are unable or unwilling to do this, then the state of Indiana needs to reduce the amount of money being allocated to those private schools and increase the funding going to public schools. So what can you do to make a change? Contact your legislators. State Senator Mark Messmer and U.S. Senator Mike Braun. So Mark Messmer and Mike Braun are both from the community I live in, actually the town that I live in. And Mike Braun is actually running for governor, so they'd be great people to contact. So while this idea of school choice is appealing, we must be mindful of its consequences on our public education system, especially for our students with disabilities. I urge you to contact these representatives that I have listed and mentioned everything that we have talked about, what needs to change and why it needs to change, to prioritize strengthening our public schools, enhance accountability for private schools, receiving those public funds, and ensure equitable access to quality education for all students. Thanks.